Shall we stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
President Daly?
Here.
Vice President Hammond?
Here.
Trustee Clements? Here. Trustee Parr? Here. Trustee Schwartz?
Here.
I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Laura Hammond to lead the next section here.
So we lost a dear friend, colleague, former teacher, coach this past week, Mr. John Rath. For those of us who were fortunate enough to know John, he was very dedicated to all. He had an infectious smile, and we just are grateful for the positive impact that he had on so many of us. And we like to extend our condolences to his family, and at this time, take a moment of silence in his honor. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, welcome everybody. We're gonna be doing a little dance tonight because Dr. Bowers has lost most of her voice. So between myself and Anne and the rest of us, we'll be piecing things together. So if she's squeaking over here, we know why. So we're going to start right in with our presentation from Monolith Solar. So we have Mr. Mark Fobare here, the CEO from Monolith Solar. Hi, and he's going to, microphone please. The microphone is really so that the recording for the people at home can hear you.
So Mark,
You can raise it or hold it out. Yeah.
Mark, if you wouldn't mind, I'm just going to give as much as I can, just a quick overview. So a couple of months ago, we had a situation, we've talked about it at a couple of Board of Ed meetings and some meetings throughout the district, where one day it was kind of serendipity that one of our maintenance workers was watching the beautiful view, and as they were looking at the river, saw some smoke rising from the top of this building, and went up to figure out what it was, and it was a device that was related to the solar panels up there that was malfunctioning. And so we've had numerous meetings with Mark and his company and the individuals that have an expertise in this area from his company. We also had 2 independent analyses done by people in other companies with an expertise in solar. And we believe after all of the understanding and the communication that we kind of understand, and I should also say Peter Henderson was very helpful, as well as he kind of was in the background coaching us through it. And so we all came to a conclusion of what has occurred, and and Mark is here to share that with us. We also have our attorney here, Mike Lambert, who will be giving us recommendations as we move forward, and we'll also be requesting some things at the end. So Mark.
I think it's on.
Hello?
Good.
Okay. Hi, I'm Mark Fobare. I'm with Monolith Solar Associates. We started this company about 8 years ago. The situation that, as Diane has described it, was exactly that. There's a box that was up on top of the roof, and this is one of 16 boxes that was up there from a company called Solar BOS. It's what's referred to as a DC disconnect. And what happened inside of this is that there was writing on top of it. This is what's referred to as a NEMA 4X box. That NEMA 4X rating is a industry standard rating that is supposed to allow for direct spray with regard to rain and water resistance. The box failed. This is something that was purchased on the open market, and this was supposedly one of the best boxes in the area. We went up there. We turned the system off within about 20, 25, 30 minutes, I think, from the call. Right. The And I'm trying to think back through the steps here. From that point, we disconnected and disabled the system to ensure there wasn't any more power going through it. And at that point, we went and looked from several different inspections. Several different companies have gone through this. So what happened was a mechanical failure. All right, the box was defective. It allowed rain inside. It led to arcing, and that's what caused the smoke and damage. There was no damage to the building. It was contained inside this box that's about yay big. All right. The fix to this is relatively simple. We go up there with a box that doesn't have any openings on the outside. It's watertight. It's metal. So if anything should happen in the future, it's fully contained. It's highly doubtful it's going to happen. This is literally a 1 in a million situation. We see what's happened, and we're going to go and fix it. It's kind of that simple. There's not a lot to get involved with here. I did not put together a presentation. It's something that's as simple as, in layman's terms, driving down the street and your tire blew. The car manufacturer didn't really have any direct participation in what happened with the manufacturer of that tire, but I'm standing here and I'm taking responsibility to make sure the system is safe. So, is there any questions that I can help you guys understand what's going on?
Mark, could you talk a little bit about the, have you replaced this box, right, this DC connector, am I saying that correctly? Have you replaced that, the item that malfunctioned with the same hardware or a different hardware
Give me 1 second.
system?
The direct answer to your question is the boxes have been removed. They haven't been replaced yet.
Okay.
And the box itself, like I said, although it was fully rated for the system, excuse me. If you don't mind me approaching.
Approach the bed.
There's the picture of what that box should look like as it stands on the roof right now. This is the proposed replacement for that. This is what's referred to as, this is a metal enclosure. Okay?
Yep.
And the distinct difference that you're going to see with regard to this box and this
see. You mentioned
is
that,
that's
yeah.
the cover.
Now, is this a DC
Okay.
disconnect as well?
Yeah, you open the cover on this, and there's the DC disconnects.
So it's
Right.
not so much the hardware that you're changing, it's the, whatever it's encapsulated in.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Correct. And what the failure was is rain actually entered through this switch on the top.
Do you guys want to see that?
Now, a couple of points
is the
that
one that
I would like
failed.
to make.
This is the one that they use.
So this is the only array on the top of this building that has the DC disconnect, correct?
Correct.
All right, and I know that when there was a question about, I know that your engineer suggested including DC disconnects, and you originally did not want to, and when we talked before, I was not under the impression that you were going to put another DC disconnect. You were going to put some other device. Can you tell us why you've chosen to go back with the DC disconnect?
Yeah, the professional engineer that has to sign off this with the SED wants it. And to be quite honest, I can't go against him on this. If he wants it, and he's not going to sign off on the safety of the system without this in place. The specific reason this DC disconnect goes in place is to allow firefighters to be able to know that the DC power from the system has been turned off. And pretend this is the edge of the solar system. Within 2 feet of the edge of this, they want to be able to turn that off, maybe 5 feet. And that way the conduit run back to where it hooks up to the school's power system, they can be guaranteed that it's off. To be quite honest, it's overkill. It wasn't required as part of the NEC code. He did what he did, all right? And I'm not going to say that he did anything wrong. He was trying to go the extra step. And there's nothing wrong with this box. There's nothing wrong with the functionality of it, the intent.
So how new, one of the things that we talked about is this is relatively new system or new box to the systems that we had on before. How old or how new is the technology for the new DC disconnect that you're proposing?
I'm not trying to be sarcastic with this, but about 200 years. Right, this is nothing but a switch. There's no technology inside of it.
Although
It's
the
literally a
other
physical switch.
DC disconnect was a relatively new technology, correct?
Not in that technology. When you say technology, I'm
A
thinking
new
computers
device,
and that
whatever
kind of
you want to
stuff.
call it.
Yeah, with regard to this, is literally a switch. It's no different from that light switch on the wall,
Okay,
except that it's
I-
rated for DC
I guess
power.
the question I'm asking is that with the disconnect that we had, they hadn't been utilized by a lot of people or a lot of systems yet. And so this was relatively new to the market, and as the result, we were finding out that
I
there
would
was a
agree with
problem.
that, yeah.
Okay, so I guess the question that I'm asking is how new is this new technology that you're proposing putting on our roof? Is it something
let
that has
me-
been tested? Do we know it's safe? Does it have a history?
Again, let me step back to the failure mode. Okay, the failure mode was water. It leaked in. It's relatively simple. We can all understand that. All right, there is no.
I'm sorry, I know you're speaking into the microphone. The microphone actually goes to the video, and I'm having trouble hearing
Oh, I'm
you.
sorry.
Sorry about that.
The failure mode with this box that was up on the roof, and by the way, there were 16 of them, and 2 of them had water in it. The failure mode was water. There was a switch on. There was an open mechanical circular switch on the top of it that allowed water infiltration. It should not have. It's rated for a direct spray cleaning. Right, this is a high-end box, but it failed. Right. What we're talking about with regard to displacement is that there is nothing on the outside. It's a clean metal surface, and that's it. There is no place for water to come
So
in.
does it have a history of being safe and well utilized on school roofs? Is it something that we can feel confident that we're not going to run into a different problem
Yes.
somewhere else? So do you know how long this particular brand has been on the market?
I do not know. I know Solar BOS has been around for 8 to 10 years at least.
This brand
Yeah.
and this device
Yeah.
itself?
And other schools are using it? Do you have other customers that are using the new box? Or are we the first?
Again, I don't want to get over. I understand where you're going, Dana. All right, but I don't want to get crazy about calling it technology. It's not. It's an electrical switch. There's nothing new or different about
So
this.
do we have a copy of the diagram you just gave us so we could
Sure, I think
look
I left
into
those
it?
there with you.
Okay, thank
So
you.
I actually had a question about can I ask a question now? So actually, I have a question about even how the box works. So I know nothing about electricity right off the top of that. I'll be really honest about that. But when I look at the picture from what was up on the roof, it's a box that has clearly a cover that seals. You can see how there's supposed to be a waterproof seal. You can see that there are wires coming out of the box through 2 openings. You can see that those openings have some sort of rubber material clearly intended to prevent water from coming inside the box. So all of that must have failed. When I look at this box, I don't see how any wires could go in or out of it. And so I think probably one of the things that when I hear Diana and Jen asking, so is this box new? Has it been used in other places? Like, why? What is about
The short
this
answer is
box?
yes, it's safe. And what?
So I actually don't want the short answer.
Let me.
No,
the short
let me
answer-
finish.
Okay.
Let me finish. What I would like you to what makes this box different? That it's safe. I wouldn't expect you to put something you thought was unsafe on the roof of a school. But I don't understand, what's different about it and
is
how it
without
might
being able
work.
to see the 3D box. What's distinctly different about this is that unfortunately you don't see the top of this. The
No,
top
you
is-
can't.
That's the underside of it. This is an open switch. All right, that actually penetrates the surface of the box. With this new one, this is literally what you'd be looking at the top. It's a flat sheet of steel. So there's simply no entry point for water. Does that make sense?
Right, but it's a box, and so somehow something has to go into it and out of it,
Yes.
right? And I just didn't understand. And it could be that really what we want is somebody who is a much more of an electrical expert than I am to ask these kinds of questions. But even when I look at this, I guess I can say that I certainly, I don't understand enough about
This
it.
is the one this is the way it looked. This is the one that was damaged. Now, Peter, do you have specific questions that you would suggest that we ask, or you may not be ready to ask them at this point?
No, I'm just thinking, clearly this is a component failure.
Yeah.
It sounds as though this is a component failure, and presumably you've been in touch with the vendor and the manufacturer, and if we have 2 instances of these components failing, that suggests that there's some inherent issue with this particular component. Have they accepted responsibility? Has it been pulled from the market? What kind of steps are they taking to address this issue?
They've been informed of exactly what's going on, all right? And they're very well aware of it. I don't know if it's being pulled from the market. It's something that part of the SED getting involved is that they asked that we report to the consumer, I can't remember, the consumer agency, and we will. The question that you're getting at is in the larger sense in the rest of the country, I believe, is this being addressed? And I goddamn hope so. All right, this is not something that anybody cares to see happen.
So is the component then being replaced at the vendor's expense? Have they accepted responsibility to that extent?
Right now, it's at my expense. All right, but that's something that we have to go through to the vendor and kind of turn that around on them. But I'm looking to see that this is done hopefully in an amicable manner. I'm not looking to beat them up. There was 14 of these that did do as they were supposed to do. Sometimes stuff happens, and I'm not. Yeah, hey, I'm an engineer myself. I agree with that, right? It happened. I'm not trying to deny it. I don't think they are either. Yeah, we'll be pushing them to do the right thing.
Are you using the same vendor to make for the new boxes?
Yep.
So are we replacing the 2 or are we replacing all 16?
All of them. They're all going.
All 16?
Yeah.
And it not at any expense to us?
No.
And this building has these connectors, but the other building does
Do not.
not. So why do we have 2 different systems to begin with? That's what I'm asking. Why do we have the DC connectors here and not on the other building?
The actual truth, the PE, the professional engineer, that is the guy that ultimately signs off with as a third party, read a newspaper article that said there was something going on in California and said that if you don't go the extra step of preventing people from potentially cutting through a live conduit because there isn't a disconnect switch, there is the remote possibility of liability in a lawsuit. This is what was explained to me. All right, and
The
this
system on
isn't
this roof is newer, right? I mean, there was a
Slightly newer, yeah,
significant-
like by a couple
There
months.
was a difference in time.
And I
Yeah.
should also say that the system has been offline
Yeah.
on this roof since the day that we had the problem. It's not been back online, and now we're talking about if and when it goes back online and what assurances do we need. I should also remind the public that we are renting our roof to Monolith. We do not own these solar panels. We are renting it, and Monolith is the owners of it for a period of time that we have contracted with them. And what the payback for us is that we actually get a decrease in our costs for electricity. It's minimal, but there is some benefit for us.
So has Monolith used these new boxes elsewhere, or is this your first time using them as well? Because you've been happy with the other ones elsewhere.
this particular configuration is the first time I'm going to be using this, but what I want to step back to here, it's kind of the equivalent, it's a commodity item. It's the equivalent of going and buying tires for your car, all right? It's a metal box, and we've used hundreds of thousands of metal boxes. It's really, there's nothing complex here. It's not a computer system. It's not a pneumatic system. It's not automated in
But
any
it's
manner.
what's keeping the roof from catching on fire, so it is important,
No,
right?
it's not. It's a switch. Right, there's not a fire prevention system. It's not anything other than an electrical switch.
And is Monolith going to be doing any sort of check-ins to make sure the system's working? What's your thoughts on keeping it up to?
As part of our standard process, we go through at least once a year and go and check these systems. There's something called a bathtub curve with regard to failure of solar systems. And the first 6 months, if you're going to have some kind of a failure, typically a panel goes bad or the inverter might not be functioning properly, it's in the first 3 to 6 months. And then it drops like a rock and nothing fails for like 18 years. And then inverters start going bad and it curves back up. So this is this bathtub curve. In the meantime, there are things like maybe a squirrel gets up there, sort of chewing on a wire, right? Maybe you have a horrible windstorm and something gets blown loose. And we do go in on a regular basis once a year and make sure everything looks right.
There has been a recommendation made to have the companies, the alternative companies that did the assessments for us when it occurred, to come back on a regular basis once a year to assess how the system is working. We don't know if that's enough, or we don't know if that's something that's going to help, but we want to have an outside organization as well as Monolith, as well as you were talking about NYSERDA coming in, and potentially giving a conceptual nod. It's like if we getting our oil burners serviced every year, we should get our system serviced every year. And that's one of the things that we talked about. I don't know that we came to a meeting of the minds. I can tell you that the cost analysis is much lower than you originally anticipated. But that's something at a minimum I think we should be requesting to be added to the contract.
Above and beyond that, what I might suggest is that, when it comes down to it, I have a vested interest in seeing that this thing goes well, as you do on the other side of the table.
But I also remind you that our vested interest is a little bit
Understood.
more.
What I'm getting at,
It's a lot. We have very important. We
Yes,
have
and I'm
precious
with you on
little
this.
packages.
I got your
here.
back. What I'm getting at is that, I could sit up here and talk to them blue in the face, and you're still going to say, well, that's the guy that runs Monolith, right? What I would suggest is that first, I believe most of you have been able to see the report from third-party engineers, okay? In addition to that, let's get the guys from NYSERDA. They're third party. They have no vested interest in seeing Monolith succeed, all right? Come and just give me an educational class on what's going on. They could talk you through the system as well, right? And they're a New York State foundation that wants to see the success of solar. And they can provide a very comforting third voice to say, hey, listen.
But that would not be
All's
on
good.
an annual basis.
No. I'm talking more kind of an educational issue, just to make sure that everybody's comfortable with how this operates, what's going on, and how the future should be approached.
Can I ask Mike Tuardi if he has anything he'd like to share? Michael's our facilities director, and I know is very involved in the process. Do you have any thoughts you want to share? Or questions you want to ask? Or
No, I don't.
how are you feeling about this? If I can ask you a question.
Well,
Can I put you on the spot? Do you mind?
I know it was a big scare for all of us, and I know it was not Monolith's fault. I'm just scared that it happened, and like Dr. Bauer said, we need some assurances that this is not going to happen again, and I don't know if I feel confident that way yet. So it's a tough decision to make. I mean, I know a lot of other schools are doing it, and Con Ed Solutions, our company that did our energy performance contract, is now doing this with a lot of other schools. So I believe that the technology's there, but when you get scared once, it's hard to get that out of your mind. So I'm sorry I'm not being real helpful, but
That's very helpful.
okay, thank you.
Peter? So Peter Henderson is a former board member, for those who don't know, and he really helped to spearhead our solar project here. Really led the charge. So he has some expertise in the field.
I see this as a component failure, plain and simple. I had a recall notice last year from Subaru telling me that I had a Takata airbag that needed to be replaced. I really don't see this as being any different from that particular instance, where there's a component that's manufactured by a third party that's installed in a piece of equipment, and there's a potential for failure, and the vendor takes proactive action to ensure that it doesn't happen to others. So there was a component, it's failed. we're getting it replaced with a suitable replacement. The only thing I would say is you've had third-party inspectors look at the system. Make sure that they have seen the proposed remedy and they sign off on it as being satisfactory. That would be my suggestion. Have they? I know you've had at least a couple of people do evaluate the installation and the equipment. Have they seen the remedy?
Well, that's what they also surmised at the end. But they also, I think what we need is an understanding, just like when you get your airbag changed, you would want to make sure that it's working properly, and I'm sure there's assessments done. I think what we're asking, though, is that we make sure that we have a third party that comes in and gives us the conceptual nod that, first of all, this new material will be working well and be safe, and then it continues to work well and be safe. So I think that for me and from our discussions, that's kind of like the comfort point, and we would need to be assured that that's the case.
But that hasn't happened as of yet.
No.
Now, does SED need to sign off on this
Yes,
change
they've been
plan?
involved
They are.
since
Have they done
yes.
so yet, or are they still working on that?
We need to bring that to SED, and I kind of wanted to have this conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, they will be involved, and they have been right from the beginning.
I mean, honestly, it sounds to me if SED signs off on this, and there's a professional engineer from an independent consulting firm that signs off on it, then it sounds like the.
So there's a third-party professional engineering firm, a gentleman named Jim Clevenstein, who's a New York State licensed professional engineer that has to sign off on this. He does not work for Monolith.
So is he the one that's requiring
Yeah.
new DC connectors?
Yeah. And he had.
Somebody from SED, that's
No,
just-
this is one of their engineers.
one of their.
And then we bring that to SED, and the SED engineers take a look at it and say, we're okay. All right.
Will the SED engineers ever come out here? I mean,
I've
is
never
that-
actually seen that, but
You've never seen it, have
yeah. Trust me, they're very thorough about the design. It could easily take a year and a half sometimes for them to get through a design like this. Not this fix, but the entire design up top.
So what would next steps be?
For us,
Yeah, well,
we
for
have,
all of us.
Um,
Do we need to come to an agreement?
Well, I think we need to have a conversation if there's something additional that we would like to be added to the contract. I mean, before anything happens again, the State Education Department has to approve the changes and make sure that the modifications meet their standards. And I don't know how long that's going to be. Do you have any idea if all things
it
go well?
should be very quick. It should be a few weeks.
Okay, so that's still in the process. And then we have to make a recommendation for the contract itself and what we would like to see happen. But it doesn't, I mean, we can also discuss this.
Yeah. Yeah.
With regard to those third-party inspections you're talking about, we will be inspecting on a third-party basis, not first-party basis. And what I might suggest is, why don't you go ahead and we'll cover it for the next couple of years, and we'll just move forward from there.
Okay, so it sounds, I mean, does anyone have any other questions? Mike, Lambert, do you have anything you need to ask? Not in this moment? I think we have enough information, yeah, so we can think it through.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We won't take it personally if you leave. You're you're welcome to stay for our entire meeting, but just saying, you want to sneak away, we won't take it personally.
Thank you, Michael and Michael, for coming. And thank you,
Michael,
Peter,
and
for
Michael
your
and
good
Peter.
thinking.
Team effort here. Thanks a lot.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
You got my number, please give me a call.
We'll follow up. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Thanks, Mike. Okay. No, going once, going twice. So we're going to go into the school budget presentation next. Drum roll. Somebody hit the lights. Thank you. Sorry, Anna. Anna's going to lead the show here, and Diana will squeak in.
We'll squeak in
Squeak in when necessary.
All right, so tonight is our first presentation for the budget development after the rollover budget. We call it Educational Rationale Part 1. It's for the operations and maintenance and support segments. It's basically all parts of the budget that are non-instructional. Here's our agenda for tonight. We're going to go over the governor's proposal, tax levy, fund balances, and all of the financial monitoring that the district has recently had updates on, the administrative and capital parts of the budget, pupil transportation, our proposed vehicle proposition, and then any discussion at the end. The governor released his 17-18 executive budget in January, not under his usual way. There was not one release of the budget and one State of the State address. He met with different areas of the state and had different presentations. That his proposal for education increases school aid $1 billion or 4.1%, and that's for foundation aid. Our school aid is made up of two elements: foundation aid, which is the portion that the governor doles out to us and all the other school districts in the state, and formula aid. Foundation aid makes up the majority of our aid, and he uses a criteria across the state, and really the lion's share of the foundation aids goes to higher needs district. That being said, the foundation aid increase for Haldane for next year is $16,714. Not
Seems like a bit of a drop in the
a little
bucket.
bit, yeah, from that
Compared to that
4.1%, yeah.
Percent.
That's not what's happening here. The formula aids, there's no changes to the formulas, but they are driven by prior year expenditures. So when the ST3, which is the financial document, is filed at the end of the school year for 16-17, formulas are applied to certain functions and different parts of the budget for those expenditures, and that drives formula aids for next year. The tax levy limit has been, all of the components that I need to calculate that are in, and our maximum allowable tax levy that requires a simple majority is 2.23% increase, which is an increase of over $400,000, which is where most of our revenue for 17-18 is going to come from, the increase in taxes, but still be under the tax levy limit. Now, part of the calculation is the allowable growth factor, and that's what most people get the phrase 2% tax cap from, because the growth factor is the lesser of the CPI increase for the prior year, or 2%, and it's 1.26% for 2016. So that's our allowable growth factor. But as you'll see on the next slide, it's a small component in the overall calculation, which is why our tax levy increase is 2.23%, not the CPI increase solely. It's just a portion of it. So there's the calculation to arrive at the maximum allowable tax levy. And if you'll notice, right here in the center is where the 1.26% fits in. But that's after a tax base growth factor that we get from the Office of Real Property Services. Our capital expenditures, which is our debt service, our energy performance contract, less building aid, is subtracted from the prior year. Then it's multiplied by this allowable growth factor, which is this lesser of the CPI increase, or 2%. And there are other things that are added back in. Again, our debt service, which is our capital component, less projected state aid, and then you would also add back TRS or ERS increases if the increase is more than 2%, which it's not, so that's 0 this year. All that, after all of that calculation, our maximum allowable tax levy that we're going to use for budget prep purposes, is down here at the bottom, 18,952,594, which is the 2.3% increase.
So I'd just like to add one thing. When she was talking about the growth factors, the one on the top, which comes to us from ORPS, which is the property tax organization in New York State, that's actually the amount of new brick and mortar that's in the district. And so that's going to be new tax revenue coming in. So the 1.26 is actually this, how much we can raise the tax levy limit, and the one on top is how much new brick and mortar is going to bring in new taxes, and all of that gets calculated to the bottom, which is 2.23, along with other things.
I'm sorry, just I don't know if this was based on the calculation, but the growth factor, it's just 1.0126. Shouldn't that be 1
Yes, because that's 1.26%. You move it out at
Is that right?
a decimal place.
Oh, wow.
Because it's 1 plus, right?
Oops, sorry.
Go back. Right, to figure out the increase, right?
Yeah,
So if
it's
you wanted
1
just to figure out the
point.
increase, you would need to come in with
Okay, all right.
Does that make sense?
Well, listen, I'm outvoted 3-0. I'm going with it.
Did the CPI come out yet?
Yes, it's 1.26%.
And Diane, when you say new brick and mortar, you're talking about new building in the district, right? So that's new building that's going to contribute to our tax base, right?
That didn't exist before, that now exists.
Which is
So-
always going to be, in a place like this, it's typically going to be pretty small, right? I mean, because you don't have tons of people coming in building houses, right?
Right, but if you think about the amount of growth we've seen just in the village, the amount of new buildings with new homes going up, we'll have the new senior center and all of that down by the hospital that's been created. That all gets, it takes, there's a lag time.
But it will be added in eventually.
Right,
Gotcha.
and so that may not be in this year's
Right.
growth factor, but there are other things. So if it's if it's more than 0, it's going to add new revenue to the tax base.
That's one of the reasons that like senior housing is so appealing to districts, because it increases the
Right.
tax base, but you're
Without
not necessarily
Educating kids.
educating kids.
Right. Our new kids.
New kids. Are you going to compare it might be on another slide, so I don't want to ruin your momentum, but I'm wondering if you're going to compare the rollover budget number to this number, the 2.23.
That was
Is
at
that coming?
the previous slide, right there?
No, but the actual number, isn't it 2.1? I don't think you had the number on there. You had like the money number, but what's the
right.
increase? Isn't it 2.1? Is that correct?
2.1.
So that was really interesting to me, that the rollover budget that Ann calculated, and it's a guesstimate. There's things that can change, but you estimated at 2.1%, and our tax levy is 2.23%.
It's very close.
So what that tells me is that we're probably okay in a general sense of being able to maintain what we currently have next year.
Yes, that's the general feeling.
That's the general thing. And there's, things that are unknown still. But generally, it's feeling like we'll be able to at least maintain what we currently have.
Correct. And rollover budget is before any retirement or changes. So we kind of have that as our starting point,
Right.
and then we'll subtract and add to that point. But if we're staying within that bubble,
Right.
then I think we're in pretty good shape.
Right on.
Because if there's a big gap between our anticipated tax levy, which is most of our revenue, and our rollover budget, then we really have to
Have some hard decisions to
have
make.
some hard
Right.
decisions, right?
Great, thank you.
Okay. Here are fund balances and reserves as of the audit, June 30th, 2016. This includes all of in these areas, the capital reserve and the repair reserve and our EBLAR. Those are new increases, I'll say, that the board decided where to put our excess fund balance from last year. These figures reflect those increases. This is as of year end last year. And fund balances are taken into account when we're considering a referendum or revenue. These are considered revenue if we're going to pull in some reserves. We do have reserve for retirement as a revenue figure usually in our budget. Luckily, we don't have to tap into it, but we have used that as to balance. This slide talks about our fiscal stress, that there is a statewide monitoring system from the Office of the State Controller that identifies local governments that are experiencing financial strain. As of December of this past year, 2016, the review of our financial report shows us at 0 financial and environmental stress. Down at the bottom is the website that you can go to look at that document. I think it's a 40-page document that really delves into what designates financial stress, what's environmental stress. I can tell you that financial stress are things like our recent audit, our cash flow analysis, and our reserve amounts. Those are things that are under the district's management and control. Environmental stress are things like our poverty level, our population age, the economy of the area. Those are things that, affect us, but not under our control.
And I know you're going to play this down, but this is really impressive, and I just want all the public to know how impressive it is that we have a 0% stress level. I mean, that's pretty unheard of, and that's due to Ann's expertise and Dr. Bowers' leadership and the board's vigilance. That's really something to be proud of, and it says a lot about how the school is run. So thank you to you, everybody.
Our Moody's rating, I did not include a copy of it because it's still in draft form, but just recently I got our draft comment from Moody's that our credit position is of high quality. It's rated at AA3. The rating reflects a healthy financial position, an affluent socioeconomic profile, which is what the environmental stress factor also reflects. We have adequate tax base, as is apparent because we have a positive growth factor in the tax levy calculation. You saw that it's positive. And it stated specifically that sound financial management was cited in the report. And that was based on last year's audit, which we know was favorable, and we can secure debt at low rates because of our Moody's rating. So going forward,
Which I would also like to kind of highlight, because the better our Moody's rating is, the less money we spend when we actually borrow money. So as we look to a referendum or some of the needs of the district now, this is very important and will help us save money.
And it just really highlights how important having reserves are, because your financial strain and your ratings are affected if you don't have good reserves. They want you to really have about 20% is the target, where they're saying it's right where you should be. You don't have excess, and it's a healthy financial position. Where last year we were at 16, so we were just under. If the funds were available, it would have still been prudent to replenish reserves even at a higher rate. So don't feel like you've put too much into reserves. We're still at a good target. We are still in the same percentages as we have been going along over the years. The three-part budget, we need to calculate which percentages, because you really need to stay. If your percentages start skewing in wrong areas, it just means that some changes have happened that you should really look at. We're in the same target ranges as our budget that we have been over the years. So you're going to see, now if anybody who looked at the slideshow ahead of time, you say, 41 slides, what is she, nuts? So, no.
That's what I said.
These light blue slides, okay, the light blue slides with it looks like a spiral-bound notebook, are information about what's in the different areas of the budget. You can go back and read all of these many, many slides. It'll be on board docs. So if you're interested in what are the different components and the different functions of the budget, these are your slides. I'm not going to read them to you or even stop at most of them, because it's just a lot. And no one needs to know this right now, because it's the same year after year. So here are all the different functions that are not instructional curriculum related. You'll see instructional administration. Those are the principal's offices in each building. That's not considered instructional. Board of Ed, business office, finance. So, see, I'm happily just going along these, okay? You know?
Zoomed right through.
So, of course, we need a little comic relief. There's the cat. Okay, so now we've come to another dark slide that we need to talk about. We're talking now about the capital component of our budget, and we're going to start off with Haldane's 5-year plan, also known as the Building Condition Survey. It's done every 5 years. And the goal of the plan is to analyze and prioritize the facilities infrastructure and decide on a plan from there. Our last building conditions survey was done in the summer of 2015, and that is what the Buildings and Grounds Committee has been analyzing on work that needs to be done based on this building condition survey. And the high priorities are all health and safety issues that are identified both in-house and in the survey. Many of the items that are included can be addressed annually through the O&M budget. We do have an allocation in the budget for maintenance repairs and maintenance projects. Some of them, though, are really outside what can be handled by the budget. And the Buildings and Grounds Committee has had several meetings already this year on how to address these high priority items in the most fiscally responsible way. One that everybody has really wrapped their heads around, and I think that we even talked about it when we put money aside for the capital reserve at the end of last year was a bleacher scoreboard replacement in the large gym, not down at the field. That one's fairly new. This is the one in the large gym. And also, an item that needs to be addressed is access to the mechanical equipment in the high school. Right now, we access it in an unsafe way for our workers and for people walking by.
We should also mention that the bleachers in the large gym, we've been cited by our insurance carrier because they are not safe, and we need to replace them.
Can I ask you a question? I don't remember ever discussing the scoreboard. What kind of money are we looking at? Like, how much is that gonna cost? And is that part of an insurance issue too, or it just is part of a package?
Just part of the package.
It's part of a package. So I know that we started out talking about the bleachers and because of how unsafe it is. In looking at different companies, we might be able to get a package, a better deal if we do both. So I put it there so it's not a surprise to anyone, but it's still, something that we haven't decided on that, the board hasn't decided on that, but it is a possibility, and it's all within that $100,000 project. It's all within that realm.
We should also remind you that when we introduced this, we were talking about the fact that we're going to be retiring debt. And so as we retire debt, we can bring back in new debt and have a zero impact to the budget. So this part of the referendum that we're discussing now is going to be that zero cost as one debt retires and a new debt comes up. And then there'll be more about it later on.
Actually,
We probably pay more in having somebody try to fix that scoreboard
Right.
at every game than the
Right.
scoreboard itself.
this is actually this small capital project proposition is,
Right, I'm talking about the $1 million one.
yeah, the $1 million one. This one is through the capital reserve use that was determined by the board. You put money aside because we talked about the bleachers. And a small capital project of less than $100,000 generates building aid in one lump sum the following year, rather than waiting, like if we floated a bond, then we're going to get our aid back to match the amortization of the bond. It might be 15 years, it might be 30. It's generally how building aid comes back to us if we have a large project. But if it's less than $100,000 and we have the money to pay for it, you get whatever your rate is. Ours is about 30%. We'll get a $30,000 return of our building aid in 18-19, because we'll be spending this in 17-18 if passed. And this would be a separate proposition, just like a separate vehicle proposition. And it will be worded in such fashion to say that, this is reserves, it's not an increase to the budget. It really was a planned expenditure that has been discussed a lot.
We just have to keep that under 100,000 if we added in the scoreboard and make that part of a deal.
That whole
right?
package has to be less than that, right?
Okay.
And we have the funding available to
Yes.
do that. Okay, here's the slide.
Here's the slide about the retiring debt, that for future capital project referendum, there are some large costly items on that building conditions survey, and it cannot be addressed through the base budget. It cannot be addressed with the reserves. We wouldn't want to deplete all of our reserves anyway, because that just decreases our strength. The decision isn't if to have the capital referendum, but when and at what level. And really, the Buildings and Grounds Committee has been talking about two scenarios: an initial referendum that matches retiring debt and is tax neutral, knowing that there's going to be a future larger referendum in our future, or just one large referendum that addresses all the immediate needs. The debt cost will go up, but not as high because we will incorporate the savings from retiring debt in there.
So in the smaller of the two referendums, if we choose to go that route, we would be looking at replacing the windows in the elementary school. We'd be looking at making modifications or replacing the bathrooms, the old bathrooms in the elementary school, and a number of other areas that we would need to look into. And that would be, we'd be able to do that with zero increase to the taxpayer. As we started looking at all of those issues, we also are starting to realize that we're having problems with our heating system and the pipes that exist within our heating system. And we have had in the last few months 4 pipes fail that we had to go in and make repairs, and we brought someone in to do an analysis. And they're saying at this point, these were 1930s that this pipe system was put in. It's hitting up against the concrete in the walls. All the pipes are behind the walls. And it's probably something we need to be looking at. We could not do that within that $1 million level that would be zero cost to the taxpayer. So we know that we at least have to have that conversation for this building. And we would we'd be running into problem after problem after problem. We also know that since most of the pipes are behind the walls, we probably would not be taking out and replacing those pipes, but we'd be looking at putting a new system in that had the piping in a place that was more accessible and would probably work to our advantage financially instead of fixing what's already broken. So there will be more of that type of thing discussed as we look at this older building that really needs some repairs in order to stay at the level we would like it to be.
And it's the delivery system. It would still be able to be retrofitted to our new boilers, so that won't be affected.
Which are relatively new.
Right.
I think it's important that we realize the longer these projects just keep being put out. Actually, I think these pipes were looked at 10 years ago because there was some concern.
Yes.
And now there's even bigger concern. And I don't know how much longer, I think we had this discussion, how much longer is the system going to be viable without us doing anything? And that's what we really have to consider.
Well, I'm saying kind of the obvious, but if the heating fails in the winter, we lose school days, you know, and that's not only the impact on kids' education, but it's just, it really would ripple through. I mean, 1930, that's a long time, a long time ago.
Heating isn't like a
And
luxury.
Heating's not a
It's,
luxury item. We're not, we're
it's
not
like a
talking
roof.
about retrofit,
Spending money and people aren't going to be seeing
Yeah.
exactly what, the aesthetics, but it's a really important part of the component here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like buying new tires for your car. You need them, but you hate to spend the money for them.
Okay, so more light blue slides that we can just
I like those.
go right
Oh, let's
past,
side by side.
you know.
But I really like that you included these slides in here because we've really, and actually I was at a party on Saturday night and people kept
You were reading
saying,
the slides?
no, but people kept, no, sorry.
Look at this pupil transportation slide.
No, it's important because it's on board docs and people have the information. I was actually at a party on Saturday night where people were like, oh yeah, I can go to board docs. I mean, the message is getting through.
Oh, good.
So anyway, I think it's great that you put these slides in here so that people can get that information in an easily accessible way without having to say it the umpteenth time and people having
Yeah, we don't
to
have
listen
people
to it.
10 listening to me read. So pupil transportation, we have some information on number of students and our bus fleet and our transportation staff. And tentatively, our vehicle proposition is we are analyzing a possible bus replacement. And although it's not like it has been the past few years, where we're saying, we need this bus because if one fails, we don't have a spare. Instead, we're getting back to where we kind of were in 2008, before our aid was taken from us, and we had to get rid of anything that was really preventive maintenance almost. We want to get back to that point where we have functioning buses that don't need a lot of repairs, and when we trade them in, they have value, not just by the pound. So we are looking into that. It'll get us on track with where we really should have been for the last few years. And that tentative proposition can be combined with some maintenance equipment purchases instead of putting that into the base budget and really taking away from program when it's equipment that we can pay for over a 5-year ban. We really need to replace our big mower, our ride-on mower, and with the types of storms that we've been experiencing the past couple of years, we are looking into maybe a small utility vehicle that has a plow and sander, not large like the Kubota, but one that can just zip along and maybe do the sidewalks. And instead of people shoveling all of that by hand. We really had this discussion after that last ice storm last year, where the snow team was really exhausted with that. Was heavy stuff. I know that, if anybody who tried to shovel that ice last week, if there was another storm that came up after that, we would have been really hard pressed because our staff was, depleted. Yeah.
And I'm not sure, we often have to pay overtime. I can't remember. We have to pay overtime, right? I mean, I know what it's like to shovel that. It takes hours to shovel that kind of snow. And so it's not like having people do it costs us nothing. It's actually expensive to.
Right. So this, we've been talking about it with Michael and some of the maintenance crew, and Diana had this idea, because I think in your previous district you had a vehicle like this, right? That it would just really be an efficient way to clear the campus. So we're getting some different ideas out there from some vendors. And that concludes part 1.
Thank you, Anne.
Okay.
Any questions from the board or the public? Kind of ask questions along the way, but yes, please.
I just had a quick question, Anne, about the fund balance slide. Are those, and forgive my ignorance, are those all separate fund balances, or are some of them like a part of the fund balance / reserves? So my question is, are these all separate reserves or fund balances, or are some of them a portion of other ones? They do not overlap.
They do not overlap. Some of them, however, like the 4%, maybe I can just go back to that. Okay, so anything that you see up there that says reserve,
Okay.
and the EBLAR should say reserve because it is one.
Okay.
Everything except the bottom 2, those are reserves that the district has money saved in
Okay.
for specific purposes. Those are all approved.
Sure. So I see like repair reserve.
Right.
That's
And
for
those
repairs.
Right, those are all very common reserves that districts have. They're in the school law book. You will see all of these described with very specific uses and very specific rules that govern their establishment and their use.
Like for the capital reserve, if we were to use that this summer, we would actually have to have a vote of the public to release it. So
Okay.
it's not just available for us to pull on.
Right, you can't just like, oh, hey, I need
Right.
a new thing.
And the repairs can only be used for repair.
And
The
it can
repair
only be used for-
reserve can only be used.
Only
for
be used for
repair.
repair,
Right.
okay.
Now, the unappropriated fund balance, that's the true fund balance that, the 4% that, the maximum that we're allowed to be set aside for unforeseen expenses, and that amount is, does not have restrictions on it as far as the use and the release of the
Right,
funds.
right.
It just, the restriction on it is that there's a maximum allowable amount.
Okay.
4% of the budget. The appropriated fund balance of 645,000, I look at that and I'm still unhappy with how I think it's a large amount. It's fund balance, it's unused funds each year in the budget. However, that amount, that $645,000, we appropriate for next year because that money is available. Should we ever use that $645,000? Because that's considered a revenue for this year. It was
Okay.
extra fund balance that we brought in to balance the budget. If we truly used that, we would have a hole of $645,000 next year to fill. So each year, and our auditors, although they don't cite us on it because it's not exorbitant, they do recommend that we try to reduce that a little bit each year.
And how do you do that?
You reduce it by saying, okay, we've used some of our fund balance. We're going to either put it into another part of another reserve
Okay,
and reduce what we spend our savings on for next year, or if we use it, then we have to find revenue to backfill
Balance it.
that, to balance it, or we have to reduce expenditures.
okay. All right, thanks, Hannah.
Okay, you're
Appreciate it.
welcome.
So are you comfortable with all of the other numbers? Are you-
Oh, yes, it's great. We're at 16%,
So you're,
and
all of those other look good.
all
it's
those
just the
other
last
ones
one
look
that you're
good.
really
But
a
we're
little
going to
reserved
use
about.
some.
We
Right.
approved all those other numbers.
Right.
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 We're going to use some. If we're going to use $100,000 of that capital reserve, that $302,000, if the proposition for the bleachers and, and other things in there passes, we're going to use that reserve. I hope that at the end of this year, there's some excess fund balance so that you have, good to have that decision to be made.
Right.
Where do we put it? Do we replenish what we've used so that next year we can have another $100,000 project? Or do you put it somewhere else? I hope it's there to have.
Right.
Okay.
So, a question on, so for the referendum, so we have to do one of these, is that what we're looking at, that to do one of these for this budget vote?
Just for the bleachers and that package we talked about, under 100,000.
Right.
And it'll be released through a vote from the capital reserves.
Right.
So that money's already available for use.
Right, but the next slide.
The next
Yeah,
slide
so are
is-
we
This one.
looking
This
to
is the
do?
one you need to make a decision about.
That's
but we have to
not
do-
for May.
Not this-
Oh,
Oh,
not
no.
for this one?
That's
so
not for
future,
May. The
future. Okay.
timeline has
Okay.
passed
All right.
for us to decide
Okay,
that.
that's what I was gonna ask, what's the timeline?
Yeah.
Okay.
Going back to the fund balance and reserves, we also talked about the field, right? That's a big ticket item. Needing it within
Maintaining
10
it.
years. So we have to keep that in the back of our minds.
Right. That would be something you could use the repair reserve for, but again, to be voted on.
And that's 10 years out, or that was 10 years from when it went in?
From when it went in.
Which is like, what, 4 years
Four,
ago?
how many years? 7 years left.
Right?
At least 6.
So we have about
Time flies.
Yeah.
to come up with.
2023.
Yeah, I think that the estimate was that it would be something like 400 grand, right, to replace
Right.
it. And the ideal was to put 40 grand away for 10 years, each year for 10 years. And that didn't happen ever until this past year. We were able to put some money away
Right.
towards it, more
So
than
we need to
40.
really
But
Catch up on that.
we have some catch up to do. Okay. Thanks, Han.
Thank you.
To be continued. Diana, you can go into your superintendent's report. Feel free to be brief. Or if you'd like me to share anything for you.
Well, I'll try to squeak through as much as I can here.
Some of it we've already talked about.
Yeah,
I can do
a lot of
your
it.
meeting announcements for you.
Okay.
So if you want to just
So-
touch on anything.
So the Haldane Academy, there was an article in the PCNR this week that kind of like updated people on where we are in this moment in time regarding the Haldane Academy. And it was talking about the fact that we are starting to, well, we're continuing the conversation with BOCES about the academy at St. Basil's potentially becoming under their auspices next year. So we took a team over last Thursday and Friday, we took a team up to the OCM BOCES, and the OCM BOCES just opened within last year or 2 years, 2 schools that are similar to the academy that are related to the project-based learning that we've been doing district-wide here, and they are also members of the New Tech Network. So we went up to see what their schools look like in year 1 and year 2 under the auspices of BOCES. And we were very pleased with what we saw. And so this is helping us kind of envision what it would be like if that were the direction that we went. Tomorrow I am meeting with BOCES with Jim Ryan, who's the BOCES superintendent, and Lynn Allen, who's the assistant superintendent, and this is the topic of conversation. And then once we have these conversations and we start putting the pieces together, we'll make a decision if the academy will be under Haldane next year or it will be under BOCES next year. So we're continuing to look at that. We talked.
And Diana, just to clarify, so if it's under BOCES, then its location of being at St. Basil's and at Haldane is fine.
Correct.
If it is not under BOCES and it's under Haldane solely, then it needs to stay at Haldane.
Yeah, probably would be housed in the Mabel Merritt building. We already have part of the day at Mabel Merritt, and they start in the morning. And there are times that we have different support services that come in through that period of the day. A lot of the work that they're doing with Simon Dudar is either there or in his classroom. So there is some part of the day that's already here. It would be a greater part of the day that would be here. And we also have some students that go to the tech center. So it would be more of a combination of more time here, tech center, and if it's through, and if it actually ends up being at St. Basil's, then it's going to be full day at St. Basil's, as opposed to part day here and part day there. So we'll have to see how that all plays out.
Do you have a question?
OCM, I'm sure it's another BOCES in New York State, but I don't know which one.
Onondaga, Cortland, Madison.
Okay.
And the places that we went to visit, one was in a suburb of Syracuse, Liverpool. And they've had that for 2 years. And the other one, which is in the Cortland, where SUNY Cortland is, it was the second one that's OCM. I mean, it's a huge spread of distance for that BOCES. So it's about an hour's trip in between the two, but they're still the same BOCES. And so they're in year 1. And when we went to the Questar 3 that has the building that we've been going to over the last few years, that our staff developer Stacia Snow came from, Tech Valley High, it's a very big school right now, and it's gone through the many years of bringing it in, and so that it's been a little difficult to compare that vision-wise to what we'd be doing here. The one in Syracuse has been in existence for 2 years, and I think they had a student population that was 9th, 10th, and they were beginning to bring in the 11th grade. So theirs was up to about 100. And then the one we saw in Cortland was in its first year, and that was primarily 9th and 10th grade, and they had 40 kids. So it was easier for us to make a comparison with the 40-student kind of school that we would be looking at and the academy. So that was helpful.
And when you said we went up there, I'm just curious. Did you say who the we was? Sorry.
We had Leah Horn and Gabe Horn, who's a teacher at the academy, and Leah for the technology piece. Anthony Shoa, who's the administrator that spends most of the time with the academy, or maybe I should say the opposite. The academy's requirements are all done by Anthony, and Stacia Snow from the New Tech Network, and I went.
Okay, great, thanks.
You're welcome.
Great.
Okay, so we talked about fiscal stress. Lead testing results and the district's reaction. This was a big topic of conversation in more over emails and then more recently at the Building and Grounds meeting. And I just wanted to talk about how through some of the requests of members of the community, we have actually gone above and beyond what the mandates are to really notify both the public and the students of when the lead levels are at a point that they shouldn't be consumed. And we're required to do it if there's 15 parts per million and billion. And we've actually used the 10 parts per billion as our base mark, that was a request from the community. So I just wanted to let people know that that's what we're actually doing. We also, it's a CTLE sponsor approval. There is a new mandate for teachers that fall within certain levels of certification through New York State that there has to be 100 hours of CTLE staff development that's required for them to have continued certification every 5 years. And so in order to be this, the state has been very specific with the type of staff development that's allowed for CTLE hours. And in order to be able to be a sponsor or an organization that can provide the staff development, which we do here on a regular basis, you had to get CTLE approved. And it was a monumental task for Linda, I have to say. But we just received our CTLE sponsorship. So Haldane itself is a CTLE provider. And the work that we're doing here with all the staff development will count because of the fact that we are now approved as CTLE.
So will other things besides those staff developments be able to count towards?
Yeah, well, it's most of the work that we're doing here, and we're doing the work with the New Tech Network. We're doing the work with integrated co-teaching. We're also doing the work with our learner profiles, and that all. So, I mean, realistically, I know that our teachers are professionals that like to grow and learn, so they will go above and beyond what we offer them, but they will get their 100 hours almost without question just by coming to our days here. And so, you know, they want to go to things that are specific to their area of focus, but I think we're all good, and the hours that we provide will be fine.
And would there be an opportunity for other teachers to come
Sure.
to training here?
Yep, and we have done that before as well. And we've shared staff development, so what districts will help defer the costs by inviting other people in, and that will continue as well.
Who's responsible for keeping the records and submitting them to the state? The district or the teachers themselves, individually?
Both. And we're going to keep records. We're using My Learning Plan which is a software package that is about to go into effect, and teachers can actually submit through My Learning Plan, and we can keep the records through My Learning Plan as well. Okay, so continuing on, we're at workshops.
Buildings and Grounds Committee meeting, Thursday, February 23rd, at 3:15 in the the Maple Merit Building, if anyone would like to join in the fun. BOE workshop on Tuesday, February 28th. That's our workshop meeting between Haldane and Garrison. It'll be starting with it doesn't say the time here, but I believe for our knowledge, it's starting with a 6:15 tour of the high school. And then the meeting starts at 7 in the music room.
And just to share, Laura and I kind of came to a meeting of the minds on what we would like to present to you. And there are certain statistics that she would like us to have ready for your review. And we are going to be talking about the learner profiles that we're conducting this year with our students in grades 4, 7, and 9, and some of the related topics.
Great.
Can I just suggest maybe we can get a panel of those students to express their experience with the learner profiles? I mean, I know last year we had some students.
We did.
And that might just be a good, I know personally, my kids have been impressed. So it's a great experience, and I think it's great to hear it directly from.
Yeah, sure.
And I actually, Sarah Grom is the teacher who is working with the 9th graders on the neurodevelopmental constructs that are part of it and teaching them about it. And I had the opportunity of spending a period with a class, and it was really fun to see. The kids were very much engaged, and I think they're learning about who they are as teenagers and what happens to the teenage brain, which is really an important thing for them to understand. And so, yes, I think that's a great idea.
Just suggesting.
No, I
And
think
that's
it's a
also
great
a
idea.
good connection to something we were talking about at the, and we have talked about before with the Communities That Care Coalition, and about the effects of marijuana on the teenage brain, right? And how do we educate kids to know that it does have an effect? You know, that was one of the statistics that everyone was concerned about with the survey, that there seems to be a disconnect between marijuana usage and people and kids thinking that it's not as big a deal. So how do we get the kids to understand that it's a big deal? So this idea of talking about how the preteen and teenage brains work in terms of education is also really relevant, because then it's like this perfect platform to discuss how your brain works on drugs, right? This is your brain on drugs.
Are we going to talk about the Haldane Academy at all at that meeting? Like, being that it's in St. Basil's,
Well,
maybe Dr. Shoa can give a little
Sure.
presentation on it?
Sure, and I don't know if we'll know exactly where it's going yet at that point. We can certainly talk about it. We'll do that.
I like that idea.
Okay.
Well, and I think it'd also give a chance. I mean, I think we're still trying to figure out what we want those meetings to accomplish. And they're important meetings, right? I mean, they're really important meetings. And I think it would be, I guess I should say, I would like the opportunity to express what I believe, or I'd like for us, right? Because it's not just me, but for us to be able to express, like, why the Academy is something that we've, been behind, like why we think it brings value to the community.
Great. Yeah.
That's also when we're supposed to have educational rationale part 2. Did we have it at the joint meeting last year?
No, we did.
So, it's.
No, that should be separate. Are we going to do that at the same meeting?
That's on the budget calendar for the February 28th meeting, so I don't know
So
if
maybe we
you
should
want
move
to.
it to the first meeting in March.
If we move it to the first meeting in March, so then the next meeting, I'll have a corrected budget calendar for you, and we won't do that at that meeting. There's not a whole lot on the March 4th meeting budget-wise, so it can be moved, but I just wanted, it is on the calendar, and it sounds like it's going to be,
Yeah,
a packed meeting
Doesn't seem
already.
like that's inappropriate.
And I don't know if it would be appropriate with
Yeah.
both boards there, right?
Yeah, let's wait, we should
Do
probably
you want to
wait.
wait then? Okay.
Yep.
I'll take care of that.
And the segue from what you were just talking about, I'd also like to talk about a couple of conversations that we've had in the district and outside the district, and how they're all kind of coming together, and we're kind of seeing a direction. Laura helped us bring together a group of parents that had an interest in discussing some of the things that our kids contend with, and look at how we as a district are helping to educate them on how to make good choices for a number of different reasons. So that's something that we're kind of looking at as a district, and we were talking about some of the things, including our survey with some of the choices that are being made with drug, alcohol, gambling, use, and poor choices. We've been talking a little bit about some of the amount of stress that our kids are feeling. Certainly the seniors with college and all the things that are happening there, but we're hearing a lot about stress and anxiety with our kids, and maybe how we as a district should be looking at that. And we also are working very closely with the Communities That Care Coalition, which is a Phillipstown organization, and they would like to start kind of bringing the community in together. And so we've been talking to them about a number of things. One is they are going to be showing a movie called Breaking Point, and it will be here on March 23rd at 7 o'clock. And this is by the Communities That Care Coalition, but it's going to be a movie that talks about all of the things we're talking about, and what some of the things that our young adults and our tweens kind of deal with on a daily basis. And Breaking Point, it really is talking about the stressors of teenage life. That then moved into a discussion of bringing parents that have an interest in discussing any of these topics together. We'd like to have another parent meeting where we're going to invite any of the parents that would like to join us from the district and really start talking about some of the things that we're looking at and that we're addressing. And we also would like, if any parents would like to help, we're talking about the creation or as the bringing together a parent university and Garrison will certainly be invited to any of these, parent university that will talk about the life of the teenager. And at that point, we're probably looking at an October meeting, and there will be breakout sessions on the March 23rd meeting. If for specific conversations, there'll be breakout sessions in the parent university. And the movie that we're considering showing in October is one called Screenagers, and it's teenagers with a screen, so Screenagers, and just the kind of environment our teens are growing up on behind screens, and some of the stressors that are related to being screenagers. And so all of that, it'll be through multiple months. But we're starting to look at the needs of the kids, the needs of the community to have the conversations, and different venues to bring those in. So please put March 23rd on your calendar. Again, it will be the movie Breaking Point, and there will be different community members that will be conducting breakout sessions, and that is being sponsored by the CTC. And more will come about the parent meeting and then the parent university during next school year.
And the 23rd is definitely the right date on that, because I have it in my calendar as the 27th. Can we just confirm that?
We
please?
can.
Because I must have picked that up from a
It was
CTC
said on the
meeting.
23rd, when we were at the parent meeting,
Right.
they did bring up the 23rd, but we'll
23rd, so
confirm.
maybe it was an old date that I had from a CTC meeting that I had in there, the 27th.
It's possible. But,
All right.
yeah, we will verify, and we will let you know next time if it's not the 23rd.
All right, I'm
So, but I do believe it is the 23rd. And then the last is the annual meeting.
Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES annual meeting Tuesday, April 4th, 6 o'clock. BOCES.
And the budget vote and board members for Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES as
And
well.
that's something we vote on
Yes, at one of
as
our
a
meetings
board
in April.
in April. Okay, so this is our first attempt at our new structure for our finances. So it's under information reports. You'll see the financial reports that are not to be approved tonight. They are just there for anybody's review. And questions can come now via email, whenever between now and approval date, which will be at our next meeting.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks for the suggestion. Going into the committee minutes with 3 M's, committee minutes. Middle school improvement team notes are here from January 17th. Thank you for those. Any communication from the public at this time?
No, it's really simple, quick question, I swear. Diana, this may seem rather obvious, but with the CTLE, I know that many of my members, they are required, myself included, are required to have these CTLE hours. We received sponsor approval. Can I assume that the the workshops and things that have already happened, like, are those retroactive?
ASSPs, yes.
Okay, so that's anything from the beginning of the year.
And the conference day in the fall, and the
Okay.
conference day that we'll be having.
Because I'm sure people will want to know that, so good.
Yes.
Okay, excellent, thanks.
You're welcome.
Consent agenda minutes, we're looking, consent agenda minutes. May I have a motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. We're looking at the minutes of the Board of Education workshop meeting on January 17th and the special meeting held on January 31st. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Consent agenda financial. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Second?
We're looking at now the reports from last time around. Any questions? Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Consent agenda personnel. May I have a motion, please?
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Going into unfinished business. So this is kind of a follow-up to what we talked about earlier, right? We have an internal audit. We had $10,000 earmarked for that every year. The board decided to earmark some funds towards a special education audit, which is still in process. We'll be getting a report on that. And that cost came to $3,800?
A little under 5,000, like 40.
48? So that means we have another, say, about $5,000 to use towards something else. So we need to decide what to use that money towards. Things we've kicked around previously, we talked about a transportation audit. We talked about, there was another one we talked about. It was special ed, transportation, and something else.
Fundraising, but we
kind of
switched that into
decided that
to
to be a
make it a policy
policy.
thing.
Was there one other topic, or am I misremembering? Transportation was definitely a big conversation for us. And we talked about it, about looking at the busing routes specifically, I think, making sure. Say again?
Human resources?
Yeah,
Oh, like a
human
human
resources
resources,
part
because
of
we
it.
had done it a while ago,
Yeah.
and to kind of check in on it.
Yeah.
Right, thank you. The transportation study, we specifically were talking about bus runs. Should we be consolidating? Are we using it most efficiently and effectively? Can we save any money, basically, is the question. Something else that came up, and we all got that email from somebody talking about the idea of starting the school earlier, changing school start times, right? And then one of the issues with that for us was transportation, right? And that was something we talked about as kind of a non-starter for us at this point with that issue, because we can't figure out the transportation.
Space, though.
Well, yeah, there's other issues. It wasn't just that, but so that's that could also be a different angle of a transportation study. Would we want to consolidate bus runs? Could we consolidate bus runs? Would it be beneficial to do that? Do we have the
Well, I think
resources for that?
The human resources part of it was a big chunk of it, of checking in how many hours we're using for different runs, who's doing what runs, those kind of things.
Right, so there's different things to look at in a transportation study. So we could make a choice to look at the runs itself. We could make a choice to look at, do we want to actually look at what it would be like to have earlier or later start times and consolidate bus runs? That would be a different study, I think. I don't know if it all happens in one study. We'd have to talk to the people doing the study, I guess, to
And
see what's possible.
There was, initially, we've done kind of an initial introduction to transportation study last year. I don't believe that that's the study we'd be looking to do this year, but one of the things that was asked is how many buses would it take to move to one bus run instead of two? And so it doesn't appear that it will be a huge number. It could be as small as one. So that would be part of the conversation, so we could look at how well we're utilizing our bus runs. And I think that over the last couple of years, we're doing a much better job at making sure that that's happening. And we would also look at if there was an option, would that be an option we'd ever want to consider by just moving to one bus run?
And also enrollment numbers, right? Like projecting the enrollment and trying to figure out.
And that may be something we want to look at as a demographic study. And we kind of have an idea of where we're going, but we haven't done a full demographic study as well.
So that would be a different way to use funds on a demographic study.
Yep.
So last year, and perhaps what's targeting, what's inspiring that is last year we had a small kindergarten class, right, of under 40, just under 40. Looks like this year we'll have a similar small size.
Although Brent's been saying that there seems to be a trend that additional students are coming into first grade.
And that's right, and there's another trend of kids coming into first grade. So is that an interesting thing to kind of study? What's going on with that? The populations, it would certainly help us plan a little better.
Well, I was going to say, I think what would be the value of the results? Like, why do we need to know if we should expect a big increase or decrease? And I mean, when I say big, you're talking, 10% for us is 6 kids. So, so I'm just saying, I'm not saying yes or no to it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, is there a value to, okay, if we find out that we're going to expect, 10% more kids in 3 years than we normally do, what's that information going to do for us? What are we going to do with that
Well, one of the
information?
things we could do with that information is right now we have 2 sections of kindergarten. That means we have 2 kindergarten teachers. If we had an influx of 10 more kids, that would push it to 3 sections potentially, right? And that would mean another teacher. So there could be budgetary implications
Right.
based on
Right.
population changes.
But my point again, so for something like that, if we found out in 3 months, if we find out we're going to have a big influence of kindergarten kids, then we'll hire another teacher. Like, do we need to know 3 years from now that we're going to have 10 extra kindergarten kids, is my point.
In a bond referendum, if we were to really be looking at the needs of the district in a bond referendum, that may be a point that we want to look at the shifting needs throughout the district and where the numbers are going to be greater. So, I think if we're really going to, kind of hunker down and talk about, what are the needs of the district and what should our district look like, and again, 5-10 years from now, that would be an important piece for us to know.
Yeah, but no study's going to be able to tell us 10 years from now what to expect. can
They
it?
can do some projections, and they're usually pretty close. I don't know how they do it, honestly, but so I've always been kind of surprised they just look at the trends and what's happened, and so we're seeing a lot of young families moving in, but what is that going to mean to us? And they can look at the kids that are in daycares and pre-K programs that we know will come up soon, but then what do they think will happen?
You know, that's my only point. Like,
Yeah.
as far as like, if a city found out they're gonna have a 10% increase, okay, that means they gotta start building buildings. Okay, you know, so like, really, what's the value of the information as far as once we get it, what do we get? You know, that would be my only
And two,
point.
I would imagine a demographic study would also help us know how many English language learners we might
Right, I
have
would think that
on
would
the
be the big
rise.
thing.
And that could change staffing issues
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
things like that.
And we have seen our numbers in free and reduced lunch go up, so we know that there may be different needs throughout the district, so I think all of those would be considered part of it. But those are just ideas.
Any other ideas we want to kind of throw out there? We don't have to make a decision tonight. It's just something that we need to remind ourselves that we need to, kind of do.
How often does this happen? This extra fund for an internal audit?
Every year,
Every year.
we have $10,000 to do an internal audit item. And sometimes those are, and we kind of take Ann's recommendation, sometimes those are a little bit more formal, where we're looking at payroll stuff or human resource stuff or
Right.
whatever. But we just
But
had
it's
this
every year.
huge audit
From the state.
from the state that came out so clean that we thought we would use the opportunity to do something else.
Well, I had never thought about it before, but, and I do definitely see Evan's point of like, what's the point of some sort of demographic study? But, you know, when I think back to the strategic planning process and so much of the conversation about like really ambitious space needs, right? Like people were talking about like, we're gonna, we want this space. Oh, am I really? Talk so loud. I find it so hard to believe that you can't hear me. I mean, whenever we talk about space, I think back to like people had really like positively ambitious ideas about what the space could and should be to really support the kind of ambitious educational goals that we have for our kids. And, we're talking about replacing bleachers and, heating pipes and, stuff that is really going to keep the school looking exactly like not changing anything in any real way. We don't think it's the end of the world, I mean, I don't. But given that we are talking about possibly having some sort of bond referendum in the future to think about space and to address those needs, I don't know, learning more about what the predictions are for growth in this area does make sense, shifting population, I don't know. It would have never occurred to me to
Yeah,
do
it
the
would
truth.
certainly be interesting.
And
I mean,
know
it
we're not-
seems like on a, immediate budgetary concern, something like a transportation study would be a little bit more effective immediately. We could use that information right away and make some changes or not.
And I have a recommendation of somebody that, actually, they're out of Rochester, but considered the best in the state for transportation. So sorry, it's just going away.
Does anybody have any strong feelings in one direction or another, like right now at this moment? You guys want to think it through? And
We talked about transportation a couple of times, I think. So maybe for this year, that's the way to go and kind of keep these other thoughts on the back burner.
Like, I don't think I realized that why we always had these bus that was just something everybody did. Like, that was what you did every year. The budget vote, you always vote. And I hear Ann say that that's actually really a side effect of reduced aid from the state. And so, maybe there are ways to think about, planning or doing it differently. I think
So do we
think
want to ask Diana if you want to reach out to the company that you know, and maybe we can get an understanding of what's possible with our $5,000? You know, can we look at two things? Can we look at what it looks like to do a consolidated run as well as how things are going currently, or do we need to pick one? Or
Well, we can get a value, and then we can decide if that's the way we want to go.
okay, does that sound like good steps? Okay. All right. Any communication from the public? Okay, going into new business, the CSE, CPSE recommendations. Ms. Famularo?
The recommendation is that the Board of Education approves the recommendations by the Committee on Special Education and the Committee on Preschool Special Education as indicated.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
The High School Student Board of Ed Forum. So this is something we've done, we definitely did it last year and I think the year before. Evan, you can speak if it's an annual thing, I don't know.
I mean, it was, I think we had a year where we missed a year.
Yeah.
But we were doing it
Do it
annually.
annually, right?
Yeah.
And it's this opportunity for the Board of Ed to sit down with the high school students and kind of ask them anything we want. And they surprisingly give us very candid feedback. And it's really, really, I don't know, I found it very helpful and interesting. And there's a cross-section of kids. You know, it's not just one group. Mr. Carucci will make all attempts to give us this cross-section of kids, and so we can really look at kind of a diverse population. And I don't remember last year if all of us were there, but I think as many of us that can be there, we try to be there. Obviously, schedules don't necessarily allow it for everybody, but so I guess these are 3 dates that Mr. Carucci has kind of thrown out there to us to consider.
Thursday, March 2nd is the immersion program for the kids. So there's a certain group of kids that wouldn't even be there.
Okay. I don't know that we scheduled for dates. Is that an all-day thing?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
So let's knock that one out.
All right, and that's the only one I can make.
Oh, really?
I'm gonna be in DC on.
I don't like these
First part of
dates.
the
They're a
week.
little bit too soon for me. They're like in 2 weeks or something.
I'm out of town.
Should we just get you a few more
Can we get
options?
different dates?
Okay.
Because, I know I can't do Wednesday, March 1st. The March 2nd, Peggy can't do, nor should we be doing, apparently.
No, I can do March 2nd. I just can't
Oh,
do I
you
can't do Monday
can't
or
do-
Wednesday.
I just
can't
think
do
it knocks,
Wednesday.
immersion knocks out a whole lot of kids, right?
Immersion
Doesn't that
knocks
knock
out a whole bunch of kids.
Yeah, it's quite a bit.
Monday, February 27th.
I definitely
I don't
couldn't
know,
do
that just-
February 27th, so
Okay.
I don't
Not
know
that we all
if
have
I
to do
would.
it.
I could, I would.
Well, we'll give you a few more to choose from.
I personally like a few more to choose from a little bit later. Like, I need a little planning time because I have a feeling any of these would be slightly inconvenient, so I would have to do a little planning. I don't know how everyone else feels, but.
I know in the past, Mr. Alm or now Peter will be picking, but I'm wondering if it would be interesting to get recommendations from teachers.
Yeah, well, I guess the question too would be to Peter, like, how does he pick the students? Like, Brian knew them all,
Right.
so he had a different, we could ask Peter just, I don't know how he's picking them.
I thought Brian, it was last year, right?
Yeah.
Last year. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a good cross-section of kids, I thought. Really, a lot of, I really liked it.
So maybe we could just, we could nudge Peter to make sure he's getting a cross-section and do that however he sees fit, whether it's asking teachers for assistance or having kids raise their hands or however he's gonna.
Okay.
But maybe a couple more dates would be helpful. Okay, Board of Education goals. So this is just here to remind us that we need to talk about our goals. We're not currently talking about them tonight. But we want to do kind of like a mid-year check-in. But we did our goals a little bit late this year. They weren't kind of done till October, if you guys recall. So doing something in March is good timing. So we were talking about maybe doing a Board of Education goal review in tandem with the superintendent goals because they're so connected in March, at one of the March meetings. Whichever one you think is appropriate, whether it's the first one or the second one, I don't know that it matters. And then we talked about doing a executive session around that time as well to further, do like an evaluation for you. So do we want to do that first March meeting, second March meeting? Does anyone have a preference?
Would be for,
Goals, mid-year evaluation stuff.
March 7th seems good.
March 7th, March,
I'm asking
I'm
them
sorry.
to look at the
Well,
work
one-
session goal. I know that it's-
one thing we used to do, which we haven't discussed, is we would have that meeting with the school administrators to discuss the teachers.
Oh, yeah, when does that happen?
The
I think
the
it happens a
untenured
little
teachers.
Later, though.
No, we usually do it around the middle of the year because tenure recommendations will be coming, so we usually do it around
First and second year
February and March.
teachers, and then
We
the
do
next
all
month.
non-tenured teachers every year.
Yeah,
Right,
and then
right.
there's,
Up
and
until their tenure.
but I think it's 2 different months. We do the first and second year teachers, and then the teachers that are up for tenure the
No, we
next
did
month.
all at the
Last
same
year, we
time.
did it all together.
Did we?
Yeah.
Maybe it depends on how many there are to discuss.
Maybe,
Yeah.
okay.
I know we had
So
11-ish
just- was all
last
done
year, and
the
we
same
did it
day?
all.
But that would be exec session anyway.
Yeah, no, I'm saying, I don't know if
So,
you want us.
that's a kind of a good idea. So maybe we should
Squeeze it
do
into all.
maybe we should pull out a different, it's like a third meeting date in March.
In March.
To do the tenure.
That's what we already have.
And we have that March 9th meeting
We
too.
have the March 9th meeting.
What's the March 9th meeting?
Tim
That's the
Kramer.
retreat.
Second part of the
Oh,
I just realized.
goodness.
I knew that date. I got a date about a meeting.
Good. I like you guys.
What date is that?
Spending
What time
time
is
with
it?
you.
What time is that meeting? 6?
6.
Yeah, that should work. I could probably do it.
Well, I mean, the other option would be to do like an early meeting on the 7th and an early one on the 21st. But that means we have to meet early. Like we could do a tenure meeting on the 7th or the 21st or something.
Right.
I almost think the tenure meeting should come later. Or no?
No.
No, it's
Make
usually
that-
around mid-year because
Yeah.
No, I'm saying we should probably do that one on the 21st.
Okay. And that one we usually do as like a 5 o'clock something with dinner pre-meeting. But the 7th one, if we were going to do an exec session after, if we did goals on the 7th, board and superintendent goals, and then an exec session, we could do the exec session after the meeting, I think.
Okay, so March 7th, 7 o'clock, we have March 9th at 6 o'clock, and March 21st, you're saying 5 o'clock?
We need 2 hours for tenure,
Well,
an hour
I
and a
think
half.
we probably need to make sure that's okay, right?
Well,
The
it's a
21st
workshop
with-
meeting
oh,
day, so
right,
they're
right.
scheduled to
They're
be here
scheduled,
anyway.
that's what I was thinking.
But, I mean, yeah, we can obviously confirm with them.
So 5 o'clock?
Probably we need 2 hours? You want an hour and a half?
5 o'clock,
I think
5:30?
we,
Can I?
Diana?
Yeah. Well, let's get the dates, and I'd like to talk about the structure.
The tenure meeting. Do you think we need 2 hours for that? Or an hour and a half?
No, I think probably an hour and a half's enough.
So 5:30?
Well, I think maybe 2 hours, and I'll say why. Because first, as far as the
Okay.
structure, so just last year's structure, we did it a little different in the sense that I think, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, each person came in individually, and we spoke about their teachers, whereas opposed to just all sitting around, all the administrators, all the board members, and talking about all the teachers, regardless of, the high school principal was in the conversation when we were talking about the elementary school teachers.
They were all there, though.
I think didn't we?
No, they
Was
were
it- am
all
I thinking
there.
of something else then?
Because I remember, like,
The other meeting.
Oh,
You're
with,
thinking of a different
you're
meeting.
thinking
with
about
the
the check-in
technology.
meeting. Yeah,
About
that
the
was
Okay,
different.
structure,
okay,
yeah.
all right, okay. But then I think we should have a meeting. We also then,
check-in meeting.
we also do a meeting with the superintendent on the untenured administration. So I don't know if you want to do that at the same meeting, like maybe go to 6:30 and then they leave and then we stay for another half hour. So that's why I was saying 2 hours.
Good. Okay, so 5 o'clock start on the 21st. 5 to 7 we'll do tenure stuff. And then March 7th, we'll do a regular 7 p.m. start. We'll discuss our goals, the superintendent goals at that meeting, and also probably plan an exec session post-meeting to do a further mid-year evaluation.
And the administrators will stay to 6:30.
On March 21st.
Right.
Yes.
Just to make sure I get it straight too. So we have on March 7th, you're anticipating a 7 o'clock start time
Yes.
and a post-meeting anticipated executive session.
To discuss the,
Board goals.
no, to discuss the performance of an individual.
to-
What am I-
For the,
What's that saying?
right.
The employment history of a particular individual.
The 9th is the retreat.
Yes.
And the 21st is it's a employment history of particular individuals, anticipated executive session starting at 5.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So the ninth,
Oh, are we in budget
The 9th is
season?
5
I'm
p.m.
sorry, I forgot about that.
no, 6 p.m. is the 9th? 6 p.m. is the
Yeah.
9th?
So at the March 7th meeting, board members should come kind of having reviewed the goals for the board, and it's informal. We're just kind of checking in with ourselves, basically, and Diana's goals. Okay. Moving on to the board trustee candidacy. So we have one seat up for election this year.
Maybe we should let her change
You
the
want to change
tape.
this?
Well, the tape keeps going, but once you pass the 2 hours, you have to make another DVD. So if you don't think you're gonna get on, keep going.
Okay.
Okay.
Almost done.
Yeah. Okay.
You can edit that calendar stuff out.
The counter, no one else can see that anyway. So we have one seat available for election this year. It is the seat that Peggy Clements currently holds. And it is actually a full 3-year term this year coming up. So we don't have any more of those 1 years at the moment. And I've asked Julia Famularo to just give a little synopsis of how one runs for a board seat. What do they do, Julia?
What they need to do is come to the district office and pick up a petition packet. It has, you have to collect a minimum of 25 signatures on a petition, and the petition must be returned to the district office by 5 p.m. on April 17th, which is a vacation day. So just so everyone knows, we're on spring break that day, but the district office will be open. Also, we are members of the Westchester Putnam School Board Association, and they offer a workshop to introduce prospective school board members to what it is to be on a school board. It's free, as we are members of this group, and you just need to, if you want information about this, attending this workshop, if you're considering being a school board trustee, you can get in touch with me by emailing me at jufamularo@haldaneschool.org, and I'll be happy to send you the information.
And Julie, do you have the requirements of like who can apply to be a board member anywhere over there?
Off the top of my head, the things that I remember is that you have to be 18, you have to live within the school district, you have to be able to read and write, that's correct. You don't actually have to be registered to vote, but you have to be eligible to vote.
Those sound like the big ones, at least.
I think so.
Yeah. Good. And if there's questions about how to do any of that, just ask Julia.
That's correct. And I will say that the petition packet has really all the information, including the requirements from New York State about reporting any money that you expend for
Campaign
campaigns
or
and all of that. And,
yeah.
and our seats are generally not contested too hotly, so I don't think people spend a lot of money on advertising. But if you spend anything at all, you're supposed to report it.
Mm-hmm. And the vote will happen on our budget vote day.
Correct.
Which, Anne, is May
16th.
16th. Thank you.
Sorry.
May
That date has been in
16th.
my head for a while.
May 16th is the budget vote as well as the trustee vote. But I would like to turn it over to Peggy Clements to let us know if she is running for re-election or not.
So I'm going to take a few minutes to speak, but also know that anybody else who chooses to run for the board also has the opportunity to come and announce their candidacy at a board meeting. That's what I did when I ran for the first time. So I'll be honest, it was really hard for me to make this decision. People that know me know that I work really long hours. I travel a lot. I do have the luxury of but the situation where I don't have young children at home, but still I work very long hours. But I have decided to run again. And the reason why I've decided to run again really have to do with, quite honestly, my understanding about how the board operates and the importance of a well-functioning board for a well-functioning school district. And it really took a while for me, I don't know, maybe this is true for most of us, but to really understand the role of the Board of Education, you sort of have to be here for a while. And after being on the board for a while, all these terms that you learn about when you run, like the role of the board is to, hire and, evaluate the superintendent and to set policy, like all of that stuff starts to really make a lot of sense. And I think the one thing that I've come to really understand is that for any district to run really well, you need a board, I think, that's really like firing on all of its pistons. People are bringing in different perspectives. People know what they're doing. People are on top of their game in terms of really understanding what their responsibilities are. And I think that the district is in the process of really making these really important and very ambitious and challenging changes to really improving the education for students in our district. When I ran, I actually said at the PTA interview that I thought we could do a much better job at the time. Like, I thought that lots of things about the district were really good academically, but I really did think that the district could do a better job in terms of educating all of our students across the different achievement levels. And I really do believe the district is moving. I'm very confident that the district is moving in that direction. And so I feel like one of the most important things to really help the district maintain that momentum is for the board to stay stable and for the board to continue to incorporate and draw on the capacities of really, smart and committed people, which I think all of us are. And so, much to my husband's chagrin, I'm running for the board. I have to say, I didn't get a lot of encouragement at home. I think anybody knows me knows that I think public education is just absolutely the backbone of our country. I think it's the backbone of our community. And so I think the next few years are really important years, and I want to do what I can to help the district maintain that momentum. And quite honestly, I felt like the best thing for me to do was to run again. And I'll be honest, I certainly gain a lot of satisfaction. I've learned so much. I know now what government accounting principles are. Know what GASB stands for, more or less. Anyway, there's a big learning curve to being on the board, and so anyway,
Thank you, Peggy.
that was
Thank you for
more
running
than I
again.
intended to say. So
Thank you for running for reelection.
you're welcome. So yes,
Great.
tossing my hat in the ring.
Okay.
Pick up my packet tonight.
Okay, is there anything else, any communication from the public? Okay, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn, please.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.